The definition that I use for assessment is just a process of revealing what students know or are able to do. And so it's a way for us to understand what knowledge and skills students have acquired as a part of that learning experience, whether it happens in or outside of a classroom. Too often, faculty equate this idea of assessment with tests or with grading, and they're not equivalent. Tests are one way of revealing what students know or are able to do, but there are multiple other assessment approaches that can also yield similar information. So you can grade as part of an assessment approach, but it is not required. There is no mandate that says thou must grade all student work. So I want to keep that in mind. There are a couple of different types of assessment, and maybe you've heard this language. So I want to unpack these different types. So you could think about assessment exists on several different continuums, or is it continua? I'm not sure actually. But anyway, we can talk about different types. You may have heard the terms formative assessment and summative assessment. And these are really critical. Actually, one of the high impact practices is offering regular feedback to students. And this is often achieved through a formative approach to assessment. So understanding these different terms can be helpful here. The way to think about formative assessment is that it's in progress. It takes place during learning. So while students are still learning a particular some concepts or maybe a set of skills, as opposed to summative assessment, where we think about that as an after learning situation. So after students were supposed to have learned it, that's when summative assessment takes place. Now, of course, this all gets a little conflated because not all students are learning at the same pace, and we definitely have to acknowledge that. But a key distinction between formative and summative is about when that assessment is taking place. If it's taking place during the learning process, we generally consider it formative, and when it happens after learning is supposed to have taken place, we generally call that summative. Another way to think about assessment is along this continuum of high stakes to low stakes, and we might even use the term no stakes as well. But this is essentially as how much of a consequence is there for the learners with respect to their performance on the assessment. So if you assign points in your course for various activities, something that's worth just a handful of points, or maybe even no points, would be considered low stakes or no stakes. But something that's worth a lot, it's a large percentage of your overall grade, or has a significant impact. For example, we think about standardized tests as being a really high stakes, right? It's a high stakes assessment, and so it's the high stakes, low stakes continuum is really this idea of how much of a consequence is it for students based on whether they do really well or do really poorly. What's the outcome of that performance? And another type of assessment to think about is this idea of direct and indirect. And so this idea of direct is that you're measuring the learning directly as opposed to not measuring it directly, which is indirect. Straightforward example of an indirect is if we just ask students to rate their understanding of a particular concept. In that case, it's indirect because we didn't actually ask them to demonstrate it and we didn't measure it directly. We measured it indirectly by asking them to rate their perceived confidence or competence around a set of knowledge or a particular set of skills. We can talk about assessment in a lot of different ways. These terms are often used when talking about assessment. You can have a a formative, low stakes, indirect assessment.